Today, we're talking about three role players that could really make the difference for the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season. Next, we are going to be talking about if the Chicago Bulls should be looking to add Jonathan Kuminga next offseason. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with three role players that could really make a difference for the Chicago Bulls. And so just to be clear, all these players would have to carve out a significant role for this team to really be impactful on the bottom line, which is getting out of the play-in situation and hopefully qualifying for the playoffs. And so I think that the first player that could really make a difference if he's able to carve out a significant role for himself, that would be Patrick Williams. And so look, with Patrick Williams, I think that he is already the forgotten man coming into this season, because when you look at all the wings on this team, talking about Kevin Huerter, talking about Ayo Dosunmu, talking about Isaac Okoro, and then also too, just looking at Modest Buzelis, Julian Phillips, like I think that all those players have rightfully been mentioned ahead of Patrick Williams because they've either shown some flashes or they show that, look, they could immediately impact this team right now. And with Patrick Williams, he's shown flashes. He definitely took a step back last season. And I think that he's for sure the forgotten man coming into this year. But make no mistake about it, if he can carve out a significant role for himself, and I'm not talking about, a player that's coming out and just being a huge creator on the offensive end that's going for 16 to 20 points a game. I mean, obviously, we would love to see that. But I'm talking about Patrick Williams locking down on the defensive end and becoming a reliable 3-and-D player. And so all he has to do is just be there when the defense rotates and things like that and knock down three-point shots when they're available and defend at a high level. Because I do think that if Patrick Williams can do that, it would be significant for the bottom line for this team, because now you could use Patrick Williams, and his size to go ahead and help you with the interior there. I think that that's probably one of the things that the Bulls are going to struggle with, is really stopping teams in the paint. I think that Patrick Williams could bring that type of physicality on the defensive end and help you there. And then also too, we know that he's shown that he can also be switchable on the perimeter. And so that's just going to help your defense. And the fact that he's able to knock down the three-point shot certainly would help the bottom line for this team. But, like all these players that I'm going to mention, they would have to really carve out a significant role. And so we'll see. It's awfully crowded at the wing position, but I do think that Patrick Williams really could change the course of the season as a role player that really he's the sleeper pick coming into this year. So next, speaking of sleeper picks, I've got two more. And so I think that Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips are definitely sleeper picks. And so starting with Julian Phillips, I think that he's certainly the sleeper pick that he might actually take that step forward this season. And I think that when you look at what he can bring to the team, I think that athleticism is something that's going to be on full display on the offensive end when he's out there. And I just loved his confidence last season in going down and knocking down that corner three-point shot. I think that, if he's able to consistently kind of do that, now we're talking about what I just talked about with Patrick Williams. It's a 3-and-D type of player that a lot of people probably didn't anticipate coming into the season. And I think that Julian Phillips is maybe that guy for us. And perhaps he could really turn the corner, especially if he can become consistent. So it's all going to be dependent on really how he comes into camp, how he competes during preseason and everything else. But if he's able to show that he's got that down, and then he's also willing to put the ball on the deck offensively, that's going to help you. But I think defensively now, if he's gained some strength and he's showing his ability to go out there, defend at a high level, and I'm not sure that he necessarily would be able to do, maybe the things inside to defend like a Patrick Williams. But even if he's a guy that can go 1 to 3, it's going to help this team as far as just increasing the wins for this upcoming year. And so I think that Julian Phillips is a guy that I think if he can carve out a significant role, it would be huge for this team. And then lastly, when it comes down to Dalen Terry, look, Dalen Terry definitely shows flashes. And I just wonder with him because, out of the three players, he's the one that has the most question marks, I think, coming in, because you just wonder, what he will become. He's just so raw, I think, still. But I do like the fact that he was able to show some signs. I like the fact that he's out there putting in the work and everything else. You just hope that it translates. And I do think that Billy Donovan is going to give him a shot. I think that even though this team has a lot of wings and things like that, I think that all three players are going to be given a chance. But I think that Dalen Terry, look, really, if he can take a step forward, just have a more defined game, you would love to say, okay, he's a 3-and-D type of player, but you really can't say that about him. But I do think that with all three of these players, defensively is going to be the calling card for them to get a significant role, and it really could just shape the season for the Bulls and hopefully get them out of the play-in situation. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. I think Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, and Patrick Williams, these would be my three sleeper picks as far as role players that could make a difference. And granted, again, they would all have to really carve out a significant role for themselves. And so let's see if they do get a chance to do so, and if that is what happens this season. And so next, I wanted to talk about the news around Jonathan Kuminga. And so, look, there is recent news that perhaps Jonathan Kuminga might take the qualifying offer. And if he does, then he's going to be an unrestricted free agent the next season after. And so after this season, and that's, counting that he doesn't agree upon a trade and things like that, because remember, with the qualifying offer, you can still be traded, but he can veto trades. And so I think, it sounds like that he would take the qualifying offer, and then let's see how the season plays out. But, the question is, with the cap space that the Bulls are going to have next offseason, and then going back to the noise that we heard about Jonathan Kuminga and the interest, would the Bulls make a run at Jonathan Kuminga, or should they? And so here's my thing. I think that the Bulls definitely should be interested in Jonathan Kuminga. And I think that really, a lot of kind of what happens with the roster this year could really define, how hard the Chicago Bulls go for Jonathan Kuminga. Because keep in mind, you have Kevin Huerter, who is on an expiring contract. You have Ayo Dosunmu, who's on an expiring contract. You also have Isaac Okoro, who you brought over, and then after this season, he's going to have a year left. And so I think you find out a little bit more as to how he really fits with things and everything else. But when you just look at the production for Jonathan Kuminga and just going into really what AK and this front office want to do as far as getting players that are experienced and just really have shown some signs already and perhaps just need a new opportunity, Jonathan Kuminga is definitely that guy. I mean, this is a player that went from 9.3 points up to 15.3 points this last season. He's already gotten to 16.1 in the 23-24 season. And you're talking about a wing that gives you some experience because he has also won an NBA championship, and he's played with the best shooter here in NBA history in Stephen Curry. And so, look, he's definitely going to bring you a ton of experience. I just wonder with Jonathan Kuminga, and him wanting to him needing the ball, a lot, you just wonder how that would fit into the bottom line with this young core, assuming that, you're going to get Kobe White back. You would have Josh Giddey, who's obviously on contract. I'm assuming that you do keep Ayo Dosunmu as well. And then Modest Bazelis, like, you wonder, okay, if he is, thrust into the starting lineup, what is that going to look like offensively for him? And then next, will he lock in defensively? I think that that's going to be the key. And I continue to keep saying that that's the key for this team. In order for them to take a major step forward, yes, they do need to continue to score the ball like they've been doing, but they need willing defenders and they need some toughness and things like that. So that'd be the biggest question that I would have with Jonathan Kuminga is, can he bring that? And I definitely think that there's a need, especially if you move on from Kevin Huerter. You maybe move on, from other players that are on these expiring contracts and things like that. I could definitely see that. I just think that that's really the bottom line here for that. And so, do I think he would fit with the young core? Sure. It's just going to be a matter of, okay, will he be happy with maybe some limited touches? Does he need to be a guy that has to be all the way featured? Because, I think that that's kind of one of the issues with Golden State is that he wants to be featured a lot more. And so let's see what happens. You guys, let me know in the comments. Would you like to see the Bulls go after Jonathan Kuminga? Should they leave it alone? Love to hear what your thoughts are there. And then also, too, let me know out of these three players, do you feel like these three could definitely carve out a significant role for the Chicago Bulls and really be a difference maker this upcoming season? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Once again, it's Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, and Patrick Williams. And so look, as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.